Hey guys, welcome to this week's PowerPoint. Um, my hope tonight in this part of the PowerPoint is just to give you a clear understanding of the rubric that's going to be used for your project. Remember your projects that are due the last week. What I would do right now is kind of maybe pause this and make sure you have available to you the rubric that's used for the project. It's posted towards the beginning of the very first part of Moodle there. Um, the project basically, remember, it is worth 80 points total. So each section, there's 8 different sections. Each section is worth 10 points. So what I'm going to do over the next slides is take you through how to get basically 10 points on each section and kind of give you the Cliff Notes version of the rubric that Baker uses for this class. And so I'm going to go now. Just to start with, remember here are the 9 steps that we use in action research. So we should be in the process of doing this right now. And when you're done with all this, I'm going to show you now how this fits into the rubric that Baker uses for this class. First one you've already gotten started on is the abstract of the project. Okay. Remember, the abstract of the project is basically 1 to 2 paragraphs. You've done this already. You've turned this in this week. You may add to it a little bit, change it a little bit before you submit it for the final project, because you're going to have some additional information by that point. But basically, it's short. It's a summary of the study. You're going to put in there the purpose of why why the study was important to you, and also the main findings that you got out of it. You might also include key terminology. You may or may not have this. The key terminology would be words that somebody outside of your school may not understand, because it's kind of terminology that you use in your school, or maybe something too that you want to give a definition to. For instance, if you're using the word on task, if your project is about students being on task, your terminology might be, for the purposes of this study, on task means, and put your definition of what that means, since lots of people might look at that differently. Another way I look at this is, I say, if you're going to tell somebody about your project in 30 seconds, what would you say? And that's kind of what you're typing out. So that's the abstract of your project. If you do all that, this part is worth 10 points. The part of your project is the introduction, problem statement, and question. Basically, these kind of all intertwine and they kind of overlap a little bit. But basically, you're going to talk a little bit here about the importance of the study to you and your school. A problem statement is kind of like when we look at the scientific method and describes in detail the problem you're studying, who is involved in the study, what you believe is causing the problem. So it's kind of like your hypothesis, what you're going to try to do, and what your goal is. And that's all kind of in the problem statement. And then your question is basically, sorry, I think I just said this, involves all of the above. It's kind of like your hypothesis. So you may be kind of rephrasing your problem statement into a question about what you're trying to find out through this and what you think is going to happen. So this is the second part. And this works. The third part is your research-based support for change. You have to find 5 sources that we've talked about this a little bit, that are 5 sources that are going to give you some information about your project. They don't have to necessarily say that what you believe is happening or what you see happening. They don't have to support that. It may actually be the exact opposite. You may find some sources that tell you something different than what you found out. And that's okay, because that's a good comparison that you can make. So you're going to find 5 sources. So you're going to go on the internet, search for some sources, look at books that you might have, talk to some people that you know, and find these 5 sources that, again, pertain to your area that you're looking at. You're going to cite them in your paper correctly and in your bibliography at the end. And you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either embed this into your project, which is kind of like how most articles are that you might read in a magazine. It has other sources and it just embeds it wherever it fits in to the paper. You can do it that way. Or if you want to have a separate section of its own where you just want to put all your research there, you can do that as well. I'm fine if you do it either way. As long as you cite it correctly and have 5 of them, that's what we're looking for. Excuse me. The fourth section of your project is the data collection plan. Now this part is going to be probably one of the largest parts of your paper. Basically, this is where you're going to include your triangulation of data. So what you came up with for your data, what kind of data you collected. The readers are going to know exactly what was done, how it was done. So basically what you're doing here is you're going to spell out in detail what you did as far as collecting your data. So if somebody else wanted to replicate this, they would be able to go and follow these steps, and they would be able to do exactly what you did. So it's a step-by-step description of what you did as far as collecting your different types of data. Okay. The fifth section is your data analysis methods. And what you are doing here is you're putting down what you found out when you collected your data. And this part, the difference between this part and the next part is here you're just putting your facts in this section of the paper. And in the next section, which we'll discuss, is where you're going to tell, well, what does that mean to you? What conclusions are you drawing from that? What thoughts do you get from that? Here you're just presenting the facts. So this is going to be a place where you're probably going to have some charts and graphs or tables. You're going to put your data down, so you might have a chart, and you're going to write down underneath of it, or type underneath of it, what that data is telling you. Again, just stick to facts. Don't say what you think that means. Don't infer anything. Just put the facts in this part. Now when we get to which is our discussion and analysis of project outcomes and results. This is the part now where you are going to discuss what you just had on the previous area. So you're going to look at the data that you had, and you're going to talk. I believe this is telling me. I'm inferring this, and so you're going to really kind of break it down more to what this means to you in this part. I do want to make sure I point out here that according to the rubric, one of your sources that you cite has to be included in this section. If you look on the rubric, it says that you have to have one in there. So please make sure that you have one in there. Okay? And this part also puts in any conclusions that you've drawn. It also talks about what you might do differently. So if you were going to do this over and do something differently, which most of the time we would because it never goes perfectly. I don't care if you've done this 100 times. You just write about what you have done differently. And does that mean that what you did was wrong? No, not at all. It just means that you've learned something. That if you were to do something like this again, you would do something differently. It may be that you would have collected a different kind of data. It may be that you would have collected data longer or on different days. So there's lots of different things that it could mean. And you might also describe any struggles, obstacles that you had while doing this. So in some cases it's like a snow day. Now obviously we won't have one of those. It may be that you have a student teacher and the student teacher was doing something during this time. So there's lots of struggles, obstacles you could have had. All right, the next section is the dissemination of results and future directions. So this one, again, is pretty simple. You're going to describe two audiences that you would share these conclusions with. So you've done this project now. Who do you think would benefit from it? And so that might be, if I'm a middle school math teacher, it could be the other math teachers. If I'm an elementary teacher, it could be my other grade level teachers. It could be my principal. It might be somebody else. So some people that you would share this with, and why do you think they would benefit from it if they heard it? And if there's anything else now that you would do at this point. All right, so again, this is kind of a shorter section. Won't be really long. And then the last section. And when I'm thinking about this now, I'm hoping that and I'll have to go back and look at the rubric that's used for this, because I think that one still might say MLA style. I'm not sure if I put the updated one on there now as I'm thinking about it. So please remember though, now Baker is all APA. I know there's a couple of you that have been doing MLA for every single course you've had, and this is one of your last courses. I do apologize for that, but Baker is 100% APA now, so make sure that you use an APA. Make sure your writing is clear, no serious errors. If you can put some voice in there and what I mean by voice is to try to make it interesting, exciting to read. So we're going to be looking at that. And so that's the last part. So those are all of the sections for the project. I'm hoping that this helped to make all the 8 sections clearer. I would refer back to this if I was you when you get to week 7 and you're actually typing it up. I would come back to this and probably look at it. That may be helpful to you at that point. So, and obviously at that point, if you have further questions, you can email me or let me know, or anytime before then as well. So I'm hoping again that this makes the rubric a little bit clearer for your project as you start putting things together for that. Thank you.